Hello and welcome back to the Faith and Culture Show. I'm Catherine Camp, your hostess for the show. And today I have another treat for you. But as you know, if you watch regularly, this is where we learn about different topics going on in our culture. And we do this so that we can have conversations with others, conversations that count, not just those surface conversations. But we want to dig deeply so that we can speak with others in our culture and make a difference. We want to have those conversations with an eternal perspective. Today, I have
Leigh Wambsganss
on our show, and she is an incredible woman, and I think she's a warrior. Her background is unbelievable, and she's out there doing things, and she is a Christian in action, because I know she brings her ethics and morals into the arena of our culture as well as into the political arena. And so let me give you a little bit of her background today. She is the Chief Communications Officer of Patriot Mobile, also the founding member and Executive Director of Patriot Mobile Action. As CCO, Leigh focuses on internal and external strategic corporate communications, public relations, media, investor, and employee relations, corporate messaging, and media presence at Patriot Mobile. That's a mouthful. She was named 2022 top 5 power player in North Texas by Axios. Leigh has been a tireless leader in conservative politics for over 30 years. She co-founded, serves as president and board member of South Lake Families PAC, which brought awareness to a nationwide issue of critical race theory. She is a founding board member and executive director of Patriot Mobile Action in Texas, PAC, focused on keeping Texas red. Leigh serves on Texas's Tarrant County Republican Party Executive Committee. Prior to joining Patriot Mobile, Leigh has held multiple leadership positions, including founder and CEO of South Lake Realty, co-founder and COO of WXP Holdings, and has served on the board of multiple nonprofits. Leigh started her professional career as a television news anchor, reporter, and producer, and served as congressional campaign and district office staff during the early 90s Republican Revolution. She holds a BA in communications from the University of Central Oklahoma and a master's degree in organizational management from Dallas Baptist University. And I can say that this is one of the first people I've ever been able to talk to who actually gets to use and puts in action what she learned in university. So that's a pretty awesome thing, because many of us get great degrees, but we don't utilize them. Hi, Leigh. Thank you for being here. I know you're super busy.
Oh, I'm blessed to be here. Thank you, Dr. Catherine. And we joked about my last name, Wambsganss. That is a mouthful, and that is my husband's fault. That's true love to take that one, let me tell you.
And it's a W, so it's at the end of the alphabet.
Always at the end, yes.
I remember I was a V, like victory, so I just kind of had to wait in school, for that. It's okay. We get used to it. Well, I wanted to start by asking you, because I want to learn a little bit more about you so that people can get an idea, the things that you've done seems so far reaching for many, many people. But I just kind of want people to get to know who you are. And I know it says you started out in journalism, you were doing media. How was your path? What led you first into media, and then why you decided to move on from there?
So I grew up in a home where affording a big college was not a reality. And so I entered into beauty pageants. And as much as it wasn't my thing, I needed scholarship money. And so as a part of preparation for my first pageant, we were advised that we had to be up on our world politics because those questions would come up in the interview. I know most people think of beauty pageant questions as the one or two that happens with the top 10 that are on stage. Well, in most pageants, there's a more interview process before that. And we were asked government questions, but because of that, as a junior and senior in high school, I forced myself to watch the news, and then I got hooked. And that kind of put me in a direction of what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a truth teller. I wanted to be a reporter. So fast forward, I did get a first runner-up beauty pageant award, which did give me a bit of scholarship. And my undergrad degree was in broadcast journalism. So that's sort of, straight out of college, what I did. I started at the television news station as a switcher. Back in the old days, that's in the control room where we had 3/4-inch tapes, which I know it's, like our tape was, much larger than a cell phone is today. They were, about this big and they were about that thick. And I would when I saw the network signal come in, I would take the tape out, put the next commercial in and vice versa, and then switch it back to network. When I did that, I was asked to fill in for the news girl, which was my thing and what I wanted to do. And after filling in several times, I was offered, a full-time job. And from there became a main news anchor and producer at the Colorado television station I was at.
That is so interesting. And I understand it's just kind of like a little progression. And I hope those out there listening, don't be discouraged. Don't see the end result over here and not think that you could it's a step-by-step process. So
it is. And so many today don't want to start serving. You can't lead until you've served. That's what I always tell my kids.
That is excellent advice. I just finished my most recent newsletter and put it out yesterday. And it's about that. Those stepping stones are very important to building blocks of our foundation. And it's with our walk with Christ and with the Lord. We have to have that solid foundation so we can handle the other things that come along. So when you left journalism, because that's for me, it's a fulfilling job, career. I was lucky enough to work just briefly at the Irvine, I guess their version of public television. Irving, California, not California, Texas. So it was just a very brief shot there. So since you were doing anchoring, what prompted you to leave?
Well, because I was, kind of had the political bug at the time, no one else at the news station wanted to cover the political beat. And I was that nerd that enjoyed going to county commissioners meetings and writing about the decisions that were being made and trying to translate that to our listeners of how that actually impacts them in their daily lives. And then in 1996, I was recruited to go to work for a congressman who was in his re-election campaign for Congress, and that's in Colorado. Sorry, that was 94. Okay. So I worked on the congressional election in Colorado, and then I was recruited to Texas in 96 to work on a congressional election here. So that's what brought me from Colorado to Texas. And from there, I went to work in corporate America, a lot of public relations, a lot of writing, PR jobs, that kind of thing. And then for 20 years, I had my own real estate company, but I never stopped being active and involved in politics. I would just do it on the side. I ran city council elections, very active in congressional races. So it was just one of those things that never ended.
Okay. So that's also very interesting. I mean, that seems like a fast-paced sort of a job business working alongside a congressman, because that's a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of pressure. I'll never forget one of my my congressmen said, Leigh, you're great at scheduling when I'm in the district, but every few hours I need 15 minutes because, Congress people have to go to the bathroom too. So I was like, oh, okay. I was packing it in there. I was making sure every person got their meeting. So.
Well, it's hard, even for us who are so distant from people, they don't know their congressmen, they don't know their senators, they don't know their delegates and their local senators. It's hard for us to remember they're human beings too. So it's a good thing to have relationships. What would you say, since you worked on that end of it, to the average citizen about getting to know their local delegates?
Well, I think something that Christians need to remember, I think it's human nature to get riled up and speak out when people make decisions that you don't like, right? And we need to speak truth to power. We need to do that. But equally important, when people make decisions that are right and righteous, we need to lift those people up. And as brothers and sisters in Christ, it's our responsibility to do that, because our elected officials that are making righteous decisions are getting attacked like never before. And I'm a person, I don't believe any of this is political. I believe it's spiritual warfare. It just plays out in every realm of the physical world that we live in, whether that be your work life, your school life, whether that be in the halls of Congress or in your town hall, city council, or school boards. But what you need to remember is when people are doing the right thing, we also need to encourage them and be encouragers and speak life into them, because if all they hear is the negative voices, they're much more likely to start to take a knee to those negative voices if they never hear us lifting them up.
Wow, that's such good advice. So I've heard people have told me, well, especially when there's someone up for re-election or a new person for a school board or delegate, local, they say, take them out to lunch. And
100%.
Don't like them. So you just have to step over, like you just said. So,
well, and the Bible tells us to pray for our leaders. It doesn't just tell us to pray for the leaders that we agree with, right? And making coffee appointments, making lunch appointments are hugely important. And if you're in DC for an event and you have an afternoon free to yourself, make an appointment to go visit with your elected congressperson and just sit down with them and talk to them about, what you believe are biblical values in government and what you would encourage them to do. And, I will tell you, one of the things that really disarmed a person that we politically disagreed with greatly, but I said, hey, can I pray for you? And it really disarms people, because when you bring the Holy Spirit into it, it's the only thing that can sort of crack that shell.
Yeah, that's true. That is really, really wise, what you're saying here, because our tendency is, like you said earlier, is to yell and scream and just blurt out things, especially with social media. It's easier because it's almost anonymous. Most people have these weird, like, pen names that they put out there, and they can hide behind that.
Yeah.
So a lot of people think that it's that their congressmen are so far above them that they can't make appointments to them. Well, they on that.
Yeah, they should be able to. I mean, you have to understand, if a congressman is home for 3 days, their schedule was set, a month ago. So I would encourage you to bring your patients, but definitely to schedule a meeting. And there's strength in numbers. If you have a coalition where you have 7 people that want to sit down and talk about the same issues, that's always a better approach. But yeah, I mean, the congressional members used to always have town halls. A lot of them don't have them anymore because of the violence that's broken out, or they'll also have teletown halls to call in and be a part of that. You can also always email your congressman, find them on the web, on their website, and send them your comments that way. And you can call the congressional's office, whether it's your U.S. congressman, your state house representative, or your state senator, call their office and give them your feedback on bills that are being proposed. Those offices keep track of calls, the calls that have the most power in all of those areas. So, for example, if in Texas, if I'm calling, an Oklahoma representative, my voice means less than if I'm actually an Oklahoma resident, right? So it's really important to contact the person whose district you live in and to, follow through with them, give them your opinion, and all of that. I always want to encourage people you can be very strong in your position, but speak in kindness. Remember that we are always a representative of Christ, and to be hostile and hateful and letting yourself slip into the bad language. I always say when you lose your composure, you lose your argument. So also remember those staffers answering the phone. You may be their only example of Christ. So you need to always speak truth, but do it in a logical, calm, and resolute, but kind manner.
Okay, I wasn't expecting to think of this, but it's just popped into my head. Where I live, we have both senators are Democrat, and they are, I don't know how to put it, but they're not very amenable. And their staffers have an answer for everything that it's completely, I guess, they don't understand what the local people are going through, or they don't care. So what would your suggestion be when you are not on the same team, basically? Personally, this is hard for me to talk about because I see everything as it's one team, and we really a lot of things that are happening, I see them as happening because of something higher going on, not only spiritual warfare, but there's a globalist,
Yes.
background, darkness happening, and some senators and some Congress people have been bought out, and so they don't really have the interests of the people in mind. And so when someone has to call someone that they don't at all agree with, and they know that they've taken a lot of money from outside interests that are on a global scale, how do we does our call even make a difference?
It does make a difference. I say you still do it, because I always say the duty is ours, the results are his. So our duty is to still speak truth to it. That doesn't mean we're going to win. God tells me to do things that he doesn't guarantee me I'm going to win when I do them. I'm just supposed to do them out of obedience. So you still speak your voice, but you also want to very prayerfully approach where your voice can be best utilized. In those situations, it may be that you have more of a voice at your local government. And keep in mind too, for example, my current congresswoman and my congressman before her, my current congresswoman started at city council. That's where I got to know her. My congressman before her started at city council and then became mayor. You need to interact and develop relationships with your local elected officials, and you need to build coalitions to get godly, responsible local officials elected. It really is, here's the thing. The Democrats know the long game, right? And they have been pouring hundreds of thousands of dollars into local races for decades. And the Republicans really just started catching on to that about 5 years ago. And so what we need to realize is the most control we can have as citizens is of our city councils and our school boards and our county commissioners. And that all feeds up. These are like, the A team for the major leagues, right? Once you get those people established in local government, usually a lot of them will move into other positions. So focus on that and don't think it's too small, because, here in Texas, we don't have a state income tax. Our largest tax item is our property taxes, and those are created and voted upon by our school districts, our city councils, and our county commissioners. So that's the biggest financial impact to our Texas families. So those local offices, people say, oh, it sounds cliche to say the most important, election is your school board. Well, it is to your pocketbook, and it certainly is to children. And I say this to a lot of Christians who are homeschooling or who can afford to have their kids in Christian private school, that the reasons the public schools got so out of control with all of the LGBTQ indoctrination and the Planned Parenthood being really sort of corporately implanted as a part of the scholastic system is because the Christians turned their back on public schools. And even if your kid's not in public school, our kiddos are going to be only about 15% of the population in their dynamics of their grown-up world, which means they're never going to be able to vote good people in if we don't start paying attention to public schools, make sure the curriculum is education, not leftist indoctrination, and make sure those kids can't be victimized and traumatized by the LGBTQ lobby that wants to tell babies that they're not born with a particular sex, or wants to tell babies that because of the color of skin they are born with, they are either a racist or a victim. So these are some really important things in politics. I know everyone wants to talk to your congressman, but having a relationship with your city council person and your school board member, I would say, is even more important.
What would you say? A lot of people are in this working for this movement of peacekeepers, which would be the sheriffs. Some individuals I've spoken to say that they don't have as much power. I don't even know if that's anything you know about, but I'm curious of what your thoughts are on getting to know your local sheriff as far as a political entity.
Well, your local sheriff and your local, in Texas, the only constitutionally mandated law enforcement is the sheriff. Getting to know your chief of police. Those people see things we don't have to see. And when it comes to traumatic scenes, you can't unsee things. So they need our prayers, and they do need our relationships. Usually the sheriffs are elected. Our sheriff is elected. I always say in Tarrant County, Texas, we have the best sheriff in the nation. He's a godly man. He has walked the walk. He's married to just a fabulous, godly woman. And this is a family that has adopted troubled children over the years, many, many, many troubled children, and brought them up and turned them into, prayed over them and poured into them to make creative adults and productive adults. He's a deeply caring man. His heart breaks for victims of crime. Tarrant County is the largest red county in the nation. And in Tarrant County, within the last 2 years, we did our sheriff's office did a drug bust, and they raided a home of illegals, and they found women in cages right here in Tarrant County, Texas. So if that can happen here, it can happen anywhere. So we need to pray for all of our law enforcement officials. I don't set anyone on a pedestal based on their profession or whatever, but I do appreciate someone who's willing to run into the fire when everyone else is running out of it, or someone who's willing to tackle a bad guy to protect innocent people.
Wow. That's just horrible to think that even goes on. And I think many people in our country just cannot imagine the things that happen to people who are trafficked or, like you say, women in cages for real, and children. It's unbelievable.
Well, it's unbelievable evil to a Christian who believes in a God who's merciful and just and all of those things. But also, if you're truly a Christian, you also know John 10:10. The devil's not here to just inconvenience us. He's here to steal, kill, and destroy. And that's why our responsibilities, whether we be driving down the road to control our road rage, whether we be in the office, our responsibility is spiritual in nature. That also applies to politics. Politics is spiritual more than political. And if we're not involved as Christians, we'll have those policies that allow more houses with women in cages and, all of those scenarios. We have movements in this country that want to lower the legal age of consent so they can force minors into marriage, and they can rape minors and not be held accountable by the law. So that's why Christians have to engage in the political sphere.
I think it's more sinful to put your head in the sand and pretend like it's not there than to get out there and make sure that you're doing everything that you can. What would you say to those individuals who are maybe aunts, uncles, older parents, grandparents, who no longer have children in the school system? Excuses that I've heard is, well, I don't have any children in the school system, so I don't really need to go.
So my answer, I have several answers for that, because I actually train a lot of people to motivate the forces to get out and vote. So, for example, if you are an empty nester, you've already had your kids go through the district, you actually have more of a voice, because number one, you're paying taxes and your household isn't personally benefiting from it. You're paying taxes to those school districts. So you have every right to have a voice in those public comment sections of your school board meetings. For someone to think that they don't need to participate, I would say if you have kids or grandkids and you don't stand up for them, there will become a time in America where they're not able to stand up for themselves. Every generation has a responsibility to stand up and make a difference, and stand up to evil. And I will tell you, the reason over the last half a decade we've been fighting back is because the generation before us did not stand up to the public school system in America and allowed leftist and evil LGBTQ indoctrination and hateful bigotry and hateful racism to take over America's school system. And so in 2020, when people were looking out across America and wondering how these, Antifa and the BLM movement, so many people could be marching in the streets, hating America and hating God, I always say, well, it's because us, the Christians, we turned our back on the 80+% of school children that are going through America's public schools every day. We just handed over, we surrendered, we waved the right flag. We said, we'll take care of our small little group, but we're not going to evangelize to you. We're not going to get into that public space because it's uncomfortable. And now you see this rash of young Americans who hate America. I don't want to end on a gloomy note, though, because you're also seeing a revival across the nation. You're seeing revival on college campuses. You're seeing, I go to these Turning Point USA events and I see tens of thousands of kids. Charlie Kirk through TPUSA and TPUSA Faith, they're doing amazing things. That's one of the organizations that Patriot Mobile contributes to. So there is hope and there is positivity. There's also strength in numbers. We learned with kids that when the first one stands up, all of a sudden they find out they're not alone, but it takes that first one to stand up. And it takes a parent who teaches their child to be the one that stands up.
And not to remain silent.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I just want to ask you also, how did you get into Patriot Mobile? And for those who don't know Patriot Mobile, don't know anything about it, can you just quickly tell us what it is and what it's all about? Thank you.
So absolutely. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. We're on all the same major network towers across America. We're 4G, 5G. You can bring your same phone. You can port your phone number over. The only difference is, think of it like buying wholesale and then reselling it. So we take away that profit margin and we give a portion of every dollar we earn to Christian conservative causes that fight for our freedom. We focus on 4 major pillars: the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, sanctity of life, and we support our military and our first responders. And we also give to ministries, because we are, above all, we exist to honor God, and we want to encourage Christian conservative organizations. So it's you can find us at patriotmobile.com. And we are unique in that we have multiple networks. So, for example, my phone, every network in America has areas where they're stronger and areas where they're weaker. Well, because I travel so much and speak to remote Republican clubs and all of that, I have 2 networks on one phone with one convenient bill. That's one of the things that Patriot Mobile does that the big, major carriers can't, because they can only offer their networks. And it automatically, switches between networks for me, so I'm never out of signal. So as a single woman, driving alone a lot, that's a lot of peace of mind. But how I got into it is the founders of Patriot Mobile were friends of mine. Oh goodness, a decade before I came to work at Patriot Mobile. They kept telling me, we need you to come to work for me. And we did political things together. We'd hosted some fundraisers for local candidates together. So we knew each other well, but I always said, I own my own business. I'll never work for anyone else. I'm too hard-headed. You wouldn't want me. So it was shortly after, in fact, it was 2021, they had served as on one of my volunteer committees for South Lake Families. That's the political action committee in South Lake, Texas, where we sort of outed what critical race theory was. We were the first ones to stand up against BLM and be called racists and bigots, because their words didn't matter, because God knows the truth. And it was after that where Glenn, our CEO, called me and said, hey, I think you're supposed to go to work for Patriot Mobile. We don't have a PR department. We need to get together what you're doing for South Lake. We need to do across the nation. We need to do across Texas. And in my flesh, my knee-jerk reaction was, yeah, thanks, but no thanks, love you, bye. But God got to me, and I talked to my husband, and I said, that conversation sounded different. It sounded like it's something I'm supposed to do. And my husband, who loved me having my own company, loved that I could pick up and travel with him wherever I wanted, said, honey, I think you need to listen to that. And I'm like, wow, I've got Glenn, I've got you, and now I've got God against me. I think I'm going to have to listen. So lo and behold, now it's almost 5 years later. I've been here at Patriot Mobile.
Wow. So once you were there doing their communications, you started a PAC. And
yes.
So go ahead and tell.
Okay. So we are headquartered in Texas. And, Texas is a big state. And the county we live in is Tarrant County, Texas. It's the largest red county in the nation. We have 2.3 million people. By population, we're larger than 15 states, just in our county alone. And so 4 executives of our company got together and decided to form a political action committee for the state of Texas. And that's kind of where we started. And I'm the executive director of that political action committee. So I basically do all the work. But we've won school board races. We've lost some school board races. We've worked really hard in the 2024 general election to keep Texas red. And we're just, we're still going. Where that's going to go, I don't know. I don't know if it stays a PAC or we turn it into a C4. We're just prayerfully going where God leads us. And that's kind of where we are.
So if somebody wanted to start to get involved in what you're doing, that type of making a difference, what advice would you give them, and how would they get started?
So I think the first thing is to start attending meetings. And with today's Google, you can find them, whether that be your local Republican club, your county Republican club. For example, you don't have to be a precinct chair to attend the Tarrant County Republican Club meetings. You have to leave the room when there's a vote, just because it's harder to count people if we have people that aren't voting members in the room. But you can go and start learning a lot. What I find a lot is people say they want to get involved, but then they don't want to stop and learn. I would say to open your mind and your heart, to have a learning outlook on it. And, learn who decides what your property taxes are in your city. Learn who decides. There's parks boards. There's the committees that you can serve on. For example, it doesn't sound real activism and sexy to serve on your school's health advisory committee, right? Well, think about some of those decisions that have been made. Think about the abortion pill that schools have been known to be giving out. Think about the LGBTQ transitioning drugs, or even the LGBTQ mental health counseling. Think about mask mandates. All of that stuff will flow through your school district's health advisory committee. So every committee, no job is too big, no job is too small. God might not have made you to be president. He might have made you perfectly to talk some sense into people on the school finance committee, to ethically and responsibly spend those tax resources. There's always a place to serve. And as I said at the beginning of the interview, you can't lead if you haven't served. You need to learn the system, get to know people, and that takes efforts. I always tell my boys, to have a friend, you have to be a friend. Well, to be an activist, you have to learn first, and you have to be willing to serve. And nothing is too small. We need people in every aspect of every city, every school district, every county. There are committees, just like your church. There are committees that serve, that bring food to people who've lost loved ones. There are committees that serve the pastors. And I'd like to mention that too. Some of our best friends are pastors. My husband does a lot of work with churches. Our pastors are attacked like never before. We need to support our pastors in any way that we can.
Yes, I totally agree. And I think finding that right church and then getting involved, not just sitting back. I remember at the ratio was always 20-80, 20% do 80, the rest of the work.
That's right.
Anyway, thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to leave us with before I let you go?
Well, thanks for having me. But because I'm, a Patriot Mobile employee, I'm a Patriot Mobile investor, I would just want to leave your audience with this. Support companies and organizations that share your values. At patriotmobile.com, you know that you are giving your phone bill that you have to pay anyway. It's not like it's an extra anything. You know that you're giving it to godly principles and godly organizations that are fighting for your freedom. So I'd encourage everyone to check out patriotmobile.com.
Okay. Yes, I hope that everyone does. I need to check it out. It's something I've been meaning to do, but my husband he's very settled, but always complaining. So I said, well, there is a company, and he's like, no. So,
well, you need to tell him when he calls us, he's going to get an all U.S.-based customer service person on the other line. It's going to be a much less frustrating experience.
That's good to know. That's really good to know. So it's so nice that I was able to get you on. I thank you so much for your time. And I hope this has encouraged people who might be listening today who just don't feel like Christians should get involved in politics. And if we don't, trust me, someone else will fill that void that does not have our Christian values.
And anyway, I leave you with this. Read Nehemiah, mamas. Read Nehemiah 4:14 and fight for your families in the public square, in the walls of your own home, in your church. Fight for your families.
Yes, because you're the only one who is going to fight for your family.
That's right.
Otherwise, we will be steamrolled. So thank you, Leigh.
Thank you.
God bless you, and God bless your ministry.
Thank you.